Here we have a view component defined using the Options API. First, we declare a data function that returns an object with a count property initialized to 0. Within the method's object, we define an increment method that increases the value of count by 1. This method can be called within the component's template, which has a button that binds an increment event handler to the click event. The current count is displayed in a span element. Switching over to the Composition API, we start by using a setup function instead of an options object. We define a useCounter function that uses the ref function to make the count reactive, and defines an increment function that modifies count value. Inside the setup, we destructure count and increment from the useCounter return value. We expose them to the template by returning an object. The template has the same structure, with a button that calls increment and a span displaying count. Now, let's finalize the setup by creating a new view instance and mounting it to a DOM element, identified by #app. We register both components, one defined by Options API and one by the Composition API. This way, we can see both components in action on the same page and compare their behavior. Let's add a lifecycle hook to our Options API component. We can use the mounted hook to execute code once the component is added to the DOM. In this case, we're just logging a message to the console to indicate that the component has been mounted. For the Composition API component, we use the onMounted function inside our setup function to achieve the same effect. This function takes a callback that will be executed once the component is mounted to the DOM. It's an example of how Composition API uses more of a functional programming style. Back to the Options API, let's add a computed property called DoubleCount. Computed properties are cached based on their dependencies and only recomputed when some of their dependencies have changed. Here, DoubleCount will provide the current count multiplied by 2, and will update only when count changes. The Composition API also offers computed properties. We use the computed function from Vue's reactivity system inside the setup function. Here DoubleCount is a reactive reference that derives its value from count. It will track the count reference and recompute whenever count changes, just like in the Options API.